My stepbrother forged medical reports to exclude me from our family trip, but when I investigated, I discovered he'd been scamming my entire family for years, and now he's in prison for 5 years. I'm 23 years old. I'm in medical school. And what happened a few months ago with my stepbrother Nathan basically destroyed my family in a way I never could have imagined. I guess I should start from the beginning. When my mom married my stepdad after divorcing my biological father, I was like 8 years old, I think, and Nathan was also 8. So we basically grew up together. We were practically twins in age, but nothing alike in personality. My stepdad is a doctor, an incredible man, honestly, and from day one he treated me like I was his real daughter. I don't know. He was always there for me in everything. Things were good for a while, you know? The typical blended family with its ups and downs, but nothing serious. But then when I was like 15, my mom started feeling sick, and well, turns out it was stage 4 cancer. Everything happened so fast. I mean, one day, we were planning my high school classes, and the next my mom was in the hospital hooked up to a million machines. She died like 2 months after the diagnosis. And it was devastating. Like, I can't even describe how horrible it was to watch my mom deteriorate like that. My stepdad was incredible through all of it. He never left us alone, neither me nor Nathan. And after the funeral, he told me he wanted to officially adopt me because I was his daughter no matter what. I cried like a baby when we signed the adoption papers. Honestly, it was one of the best days in the middle of the worst time of my life. Nathan and I were always different. You know what I mean? I was the typical nerd who killed herself studying. I loved biology, and since I was little, I wanted to be a doctor like my dad. That's what I call my stepdad. Dad. Because that's what he is to me. Nathan was more laid back, let's say. Or at least, that's what I thought. He liked video games, went out a lot with his friends. He wasn't a bad student, but he wasn't passionate about school like I was either. My dad was always fair with both of us. He never treated us differently, gave us the same money for expenses, the same opportunities, everything equal. But looking back now, I think Nathan always felt some jealousy, even though he never showed it openly. So we get to college and I killed myself studying to get into medical school. I passed the medical school entrance exam on the first try. Literally, I started crying when I saw the results because I had worked so hard for that. Nathan also applied that same year. He wanted to study engineering or something like that, but he didn't pass the exam. My dad told him it was no problem, that he could try again the next year, that not everyone passes on the first try, like trying to make him feel better, you know? But I noticed Nathan was super quiet after that. He didn't say anything bad, just like locked himself in his room for several days. Fast forward like 2 years after that, I was already in my second year of medical school, studying like crazy, because medicine is brutal. I don't know if, you know, but it's like 24/7 of books and practices and exams. Nathan was supposedly at university too, studying business or something like that according to him. My dad paid for everything just like for me. One day my dad came home super excited and said he wanted to take us on vacation to Cambodia, that he had always wanted to go and that it would be the perfect trip for the 3 of us. I was happy. I mean, it had been years since we'd been on a real family vacation, and Cambodia sounded amazing. But then, like a week before the trip, Nathan came home with some medical papers. He told my dad that I had gone to the doctor for a routine checkup, which was true. I had gone like a month earlier, and that they had found something concerning with my heart. My dad obviously panicked because he's a doctor and knows exactly how serious heart conditions can be. Nathan showed him the reports, which supposedly said I had some kind of dangerous heart condition and that flying for so many hours could be deadly for me. The reports looked super official. They had the logo of the hospital where I had gone, the doctor's signatures, everything. My dad called me that same night. He was like almost crying and asked me why I hadn't told him about my heart condition. I was so confused. I told him, Dad, what are you talking about? I don't have any heart problems. My checkup came out perfect. But he insisted that Nathan had shown him the medical reports and that they clearly said I had a serious condition. I asked him to send me photos of the reports, and when I saw them, I froze. They looked legitimate, but I knew something was wrong because I had literally just had my checkup and everything had come out fine. I had even talked to my doctor about the results. My dad decided he couldn't risk taking me on that trip, said we first needed to do more studies and confirm how serious my condition was. I tried to convince him that something was weird with those reports, but he was in worried, doctor mode, and didn't want to listen. Nathan said he understood if they wanted to cancel the trip, but my dad said no. You two deserve this vacation. I'll stay with Rachel and we'll do the studies. But Nathan insisted, no, that my dad should go because he had been planning this for months and that I would be fine staying home a few days. The thing is, my dad felt super guilty about leaving me. But Nathan kept insisting, and in the end, my dad gave in. The two of them went to Cambodia and I stayed home. Officially banned from the trip because of a heart condition I knew I didn't have. As soon as they left, I started investigating. I called the hospital where I supposedly had the studies done and asked for copies of my medical reports. The nurse told me there was no report about heart problems in my file, that my last checkup had been routine and everything had come out normal. I asked her to send me copies of everything they had, and when I compared the real reports with the ones I had shown my dad, it was obvious Nathan's were fake. The numbers were made up, the dates didn't match, and the doctor's signatures were different. I got furious, like my hands were shaking while I held the papers. Why would Nathan do something like this? Why would he want to leave me out of the trip? It didn't make sense. But then I thought, if Nathan forged medical reports, what else is he hiding? I decided to search his room, which I know is wrong, but something told me I needed to know what was going on. I found a draft of the fake reports on his laptop. Literally, it was right there in a folder called Rachel Medical Documents, with different versions of the same report. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. But that wasn't the worst part. I kept searching because I was already into this, and I found a diary Nathan kept hidden in the back of his closet. I'm not one to read other people's diaries. Seriously. But at that moment, I needed answers. I started reading, and basically, my world collapsed. Nathan wrote about his gambling addiction, how it had started in high school betting with friends and had escalated to casinos and online gambling. He talked about loan sharks, people he owed money to, huge numbers like thousands and thousands of dollars. And then there was the part about university, where he admitted he had stopped going after the first year. So for almost 2 years, he had been lying about going to classes, taking the money my dad gave him for tuition and books, and using it to pay gambling debts. There were pages and pages about how he hated me, how it bothered him that I was the perfect daughter, and that my dad always talked about my achievements. He wrote things like, Rachel this, Rachel that, I'm sick of living in her shadow. He said he had forged the medical reports because he wanted to spend time alone with his dad, without me being there, because he felt like I had stolen his father. I cried reading that, not from sadness, but from rage and confusion, because never did I do anything to Nathan. I always tried to be a good sister to him. I was in total shock when my dad and Nathan returned from Cambodia like a week later. My dad arrived with gifts and worried about my health, asking me how I had felt and if I'd had any symptoms. Nathan acted normal. Even asked me how I'd been and if I'd been bored at home. The hypocrisy was incredible. I waited until the three of us were together in the living room that same night, and then I took out the reports, both the fake ones and the real ones from the hospital. I told my dad, these reports that Nathan gave you are fake. I never had any heart problems. Call the hospital if you don't believe me. My dad took the papers with trembling hands and started comparing them. Nathan went pale. Literally, I saw the color drain from his face. My dad looked at him and asked him what this meant, and Nathan tried to deny it at first. Said, there must be a mistake. Maybe the reports got confused. But I took out the printouts of the drafts I had found on his laptop and put them on the table. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, and then basically broke down. He started crying and admitted that yes, he had forged the reports because he wanted to spend time alone with his dad, because he felt that since they officially adopted me, I had taken his place, that it was always Rachel, the smart one, Rachel who was going to be a doctor, Rachel the perfect daughter. My dad was devastated. I could see it on his face. He asked Nathan how he could do something like this, how he could manipulate him that way and hurt me. Nathan kept crying and apologizing, saying he was desperate for attention, that he just wanted to feel that his dad loved him the same as me. I wanted to feel compassion. Seriously, because obviously Nathan was suffering, but I was also furious because he had played with all of our emotional health out of jealousy. My dad told Nathan this was unacceptable, that forging medical documents was a serious crime, and that they needed to talk about what was going to happen now. But then I saw how Nathan looked at me, and there was something in his eyes, like panic, but also recognition. He realized in that moment that if I had found the drafts on his laptop, I probably had found more things. His face changed completely, and suddenly, he stood up and said he needed to go for a walk, that he needed air. My dad told him no, to stay so they could talk about this, but Nathan basically ran to the door and left. He didn't come back that night, or the next. Turns out Nathan went to stay with his aunt, my dad's sister, who lives like an hour from our house. He told his aunt he'd had a fight with his dad and needed a place to stay for a few days. His aunt took him in without a problem, because she's always been super good people. Nathan was there like 3 days, acting normal, helping around the house, being the perfect nephew. But then one morning his aunt woke up and Nathan was gone. And so was the emergency money she kept in her house. Like $2,000 in cash she had hidden for anything. Nathan stole it and disappeared without leaving a note or anything. His aunt called my dad crying, saying she didn't understand what had happened, that Nathan seemed fine. My dad told her everything about the fake reports and the diary, and that's when things really started coming to light. My dad started investigating. Called the university where Nathan supposedly studied and confirmed that indeed Nathan had stopped attending after the first year. He asked what had happened with the tuition money he had paid for the following years, and it turned out Nathan had forged enrollment documents so my dad would keep sending money, but the university had never received it. Nathan had been diverting that money directly to his account. Like 2 weeks went by without knowing anything about Nathan. My dad was devastated. Wasn't sleeping well. Barely. Eating. I felt guilty, even though I know it wasn't my fault. But I thought that maybe if I hadn't existed in their lives, Nathan wouldn't have done all this. My dad assured me it had nothing to do with me, that Nathan's problems were deeper than simple jealousy. Then one day we got a call from Nathan's grandparents, my dad's parents, who live in another state. They said Nathan had shown up at their house a few days ago, that he was very thin and looked bad, that he had told them a story about how my dad had kicked him out of the house and that he was sleeping in his car. But that wasn't all. Nathan had shown them documents, supposedly a will my dad had made where he left all his money and properties to me and nothing to Nathan. He told his grandparents my dad had completely disinherited him because he preferred me, that he desperately needed money because he had nowhere to live or how to eat. The grandparents, who are elderly and obviously want to help their grandson, gave him a check for $50,000. $50,000, because Nathan told them he needed that money to start a new life since his dad had abandoned him. As soon as he had the check, Nathan disappeared again. The grandparents tried to call him to see how he was and realized Nathan had blocked their numbers. When the grandparents finally talked to my dad and told him the whole story, my dad was livid. He explained that everything was a lie, that there was no new will, that he had never disinherited Nathan, that the documents were fake. The grandparents were in shock, couldn't believe their grandson had lied to and manipulated them like that. My dad told them to cancel the check immediately, but it was too late. Nathan had already cashed it. My dad made a decision in that moment, posted something on Facebook explaining what Nathan had done, not with all the details, but basically warning family and friends that Nathan was manipulating people and asking for money with false stories that they shouldn't believe him or give him money. The post went viral among family and friends, and that's when more people started telling their own stories. A cousin said Nathan had asked him to borrow money months ago, saying it was for college textbooks. A family friend said Nathan owed him money from an investment that never existed. It was like once someone spoke up, everyone else felt confident to share their experiences. My dad realized this had been happening for years, not just months, and that Nathan had been living a double life all this time. We finally decided to file a formal complaint with the police. The aunt filed a complaint for theft, the grandparents for fraud and forgery of documents, and my dad also filed charges for fraud, theft, and identity theft. The detective who took the case said it was one of the most elaborate cases of family fraud he had seen, that Nathan had been operating basically like a professional scammer. Like 2 months went by without news, and then one day the police called, saying they had arrested Nathan for attempted home burglary in another city. Apparently he had tried to rob a house thinking it was empty, but the owners were there and called the police. The charge for that robbery ended up being dropped for lack of evidence or something, but at least now they knew where Nathan was. With that information, the police could proceed with the charges we had filed. They arrested Nathan officially for fraud, theft, forgery of documents, and identity theft. There was a trial like 6 months later, and it was horrible. I mean, seeing him there in court with the orange uniform, handcuffed, was surreal. The aunt testified about the stolen money, the grandparents about the fraud with the fake will, my dad about everything else. I also had to testify about the fake medical reports, Nathan had a public defender who tried to argue that Nathan had addiction problems and needed treatment, not prison. But the prosecutor showed all the cases of manipulation and fraud and argued that Nathan had had multiple opportunities to ask for help but instead chose to repeatedly hurt his family. The jury found him guilty on all counts. The sentence was 5 years in prison. 5 years. When the judge read the sentence, I saw how my dad broke down, literally had tears running down his face but wasn't making any sound. Nathan was crying too. Looked toward where we were and tried to say something, but the guard took him away before he could. We left the courtroom and my dad didn't speak the whole way home, just drove with his hands gripping the steering wheel so tight his knuckles were white. Like a week after the trial, Nathan asked to see my dad in prison. My dad went. I asked him if he wanted me to come with him, but he said he needed to do this alone. When he came back, he told me what Nathan had said. Basically, Nathan admitted his gambling addiction had started in high school, that at first it was just for fun with friends, but then he couldn't stop. He said the first time he won a large amount of money, he felt an emotion he had never felt before, and after that he was always chasing that feeling. When he started losing money, he thought he just needed to win one more time to recover everything, but obviously it never works that way. The debts grew, the loan sharks started threatening him, and Nathan panicked. That's why he left university. He was using the tuition money to pay debts and bets. And the jealousy toward me? Well, he said, seeing that I was successful while he sank deeper and deeper made everything worse. That he felt the only way to have his dad's attention was by taking me out of the equation. My dad told me all this with tears in his eyes and told me he felt like a failure as a father, that he should have seen the signs, that he should have known his son was suffering. I told him it wasn't his fault, that Nathan had made his own decisions and had chosen to lie and manipulate instead of asking for help. But I know my dad still carries that guilt. I can see it in how sometimes he stares at old photos of when Nathan was a child, before everything got complicated. It's been like 6 months since the trial. Nathan wrote me a letter from prison a few weeks ago. It was long, like 5 handwritten pages, asking forgiveness for everything. He said he understands if I never forgive him, that he doesn't expect me to, but that he wanted me to know he was genuinely sorry. He wrote about how prison has given him time to think, that he's attending therapy there and anonymous addicts meetings, that he's trying to be a better person. At the end of the letter, he asked me if someday, when he gets out, we could maybe talk. Not to be siblings again necessarily, but to have some kind of closure. I don't know. Honestly, part of me is still furious with him for everything he did, for how he hurt my dad, his aunt, his grandparents, me. But another part of me feels sorry because Nathan was clearly suffering and didn't know how to ask for help. I responded to the letter last week. It wasn't anything long. Basically, I told him I appreciate his apology and I'm glad he's seeking help, but that I need time. I don't know if someday we'll be able to rebuild some kind of relationship, but at least I'm willing to keep the door open to that possibility. I went to visit him in prison a few days ago. It was super weird seeing him there, with the prison uniform, the glass between us, talking on the phone like in the movies. He looked different, thinner, with dark circles under his eyes, but also like calmer somehow. We talked for 30 minutes, which is the maximum time allowed for visits. He told me about his classes in prison. He's taking GED courses because he never finished his education. I asked him what plans he has for when he gets out and he said he doesn't know, that first he needs to focus on finishing his sentence and working on his recovery. Before hanging up the phone, he told me, "Thank you for coming. It means more than you know." I told him I'd think about it before visiting him again, but that if he was really committed to changing, I'd be willing to support him somehow. Maybe sending him books or educational resources so he could have a second chance when he gets out. He nodded with tears in his eyes, and that was it. I don't know what's going to happen in the future. Honestly. My dad says he'll probably never completely forgive Nathan for what he did, but that he also can't stop loving him because he's his son. I'm somewhere in the middle, I guess. It still hurts to think about everything that happened, about how Nathan betrayed us so systematically, but I also understand that addiction is a disease and that Nathan needs help, not just punishment. For now, I'm focusing on finishing medical school, supporting my dad who's still processing all of this, and trying to move forward. Maybe someday Nathan and I can have some kind of relationship, or maybe not. Time will tell.